Frank Caprio, the longtime Providence Municipal Court judge who became known across the globe as the nicest judge in the world, was laid to rest on August 29th in his beloved Rhode Island. His funeral mass took place at the Cathedral of Saints Peter and Paul in Providence, with Archbishop Richard Henning of Boston presiding over the service. For Rhode Island residents, the burial marked the farewell to a man who was not only a respected jurist, but also a cherished neighbor, mentor, and symbol of compassion for millions worldwide. It represented the end of a life that had quietly transformed the way people think about justice and humanity. Caprio's passing the week before, after a difficult battle with illness, immediately prompted an outpouring of grief. Rhode Islanders knew him as the local judge who always had time for a smile, a handshake, or a kind word, but to the rest of the world, he was the face of a courtroom that showed mercy without compromising fairness. Through his television program Caught in Providence and the countless viral clips shared online, Caprio demonstrated that even the most routine legal cases could be moments of understanding, empathy, and humanity. His burial became not just a local event, but a global moment of reflection. The evening before the funeral, the Rhode Island Convention Center hosted his wake. Hundreds of mourners gathered to pay their respects, a turnout that reflected the depth of his community ties. Many in attendance were ordinary citizens who had encountered him during court proceedings. Others were strangers who had come simply because they had been inspired by the man they had watched on television. Those waiting in line spoke about how his decisions had touched them personally. Some remembered fines reduced when illness or poverty had made payment impossible. Others remembered how he had spoken to them with respect during moments when they felt ashamed or vulnerable. The wake became a place where private stories of gratitude merged into a collective testimony of the judge's extraordinary kindness. At the funeral mass, family members and colleagues described a man who was the same in private life as he appeared in public. His son said that whether he was at home with his family, meeting friends, or appearing before cameras, he never wavered from his commitment to treat people with dignity. That consistency was what struck so many who encountered him. He did not play a role for television or shape a persona for media attention. He simply lived his values openly. Born and raised in Providence to Italian immigrant parents, Caprio's story was one of steady dedication to education, law, and public service. After graduating from Providence College, he pursued a law degree at Suffolk University in Boston, working while studying to support himself. His professional life began as a lawyer, but his sense of civic duty soon led him to political office. He served on the Providence City Council and held a place on the Rhode Island Board of Governors. For higher education, in both roles, he advocated for ordinary citizens, particularly students and working families. Yet it was his tenure as chief judge of the Providence Municipal Court that would make his name known. Beyond the borders of Rhode Island, the court handled parking tickets, traffic offenses, and other minor infractions. For many judges, such cases would be routine and anonymous. For Caprio, they were an opportunity to hear stories, to see people in their full humanity, and to apply the law in ways that reflected compassion as much as authority. The television program Caught in Providence first aired locally and eventually became a national and international phenomenon. Clips of Caprio in court were shared widely, showing him listening patiently to defendants, often joking with children or offering comfort to those under stress. What made those interactions remarkable was not leniency alone, but the way they restored dignity to people who often expected judgment and humiliation. A mother struggling to pay fines while caring for children, a man who had lost his job, a student overwhelmed by obligations, all found in Judge Caprio a listener who understood that justice without mercy was incomplete. The world watched, often moved to tears, as he dismissed or reduced fines, sometimes with humor, always with kindness, to millions. He became not just a judge in Rhode Island, but a reminder of the values that should guide every society. The global reaction to his death illustrated how far his influence had spread. Messages of condolence came from every corner of the world. Social media platforms filled with memories and tributes. with viewers recalling specific cases they had watched online. Many expressed how his courtroom had restored their faith in fairness at a time when institutions often felt impersonal or unyielding. International news outlets covered his passing and funeral, framing him as a symbol of compassion in public life. Rhode Island, a small state often overlooked on the global stage, suddenly stood at the center of attention because of one man's example. At the funeral, Archbishop Henning spoke about the values that guided Caprio's life. He noted that the judge's Catholic faith was not expressed in words or ritual alone, but in everyday actions of kindness and understanding. By applying the law with empathy, Caprio reflected the deeper moral principles that call for respect and mercy. His courtroom decisions may have been small in scale, traffic fines and parking tickets, but in the lives of those affected, they carried immense weight. To forgive a fine for someone facing hardship was to give that person a sense of relief and validation. To joke kindly with a child in court was to transform a potentially frightening experience into a lesson in humanity. Caprio's burial was attended not only by dignitaries and officials, but by countless Rhode Islanders who felt they had lost a neighbor and friend. The casket was carried with solemnity, and the procession that followed through the streets of Providence was lined with citizens standing in silent tribute for the people of his city. It was a moment to honor a man who had elevated the reputation of their community through his character. For his family, it was the farewell to a husband, father, and grandfather who had always prioritized them even while serving the public. The depth of feeling surrounding his burial also highlighted the broader questions his life raised. In an era where legal systems often seemed detached and punitive, Caprio's approach offered a different model. His philosophy showed that fairness does not have to exclude compassion, that justice can be firm without being harsh, and that authority can be exercised with humility. Many in the legal field have cited him as an example of how judges can balance responsibility with humanity. Outside the courtroom, Caprio lived a life rooted in community. He supported education, often encouraging young people to pursue higher studies. He never forgot his Italian heritage and frequently spoke about the lessons his parents had taught him: hard work, faith, and respect for others. These values shaped his outlook and became the foundation of his public service. The night of his wake and the day of his funeral together revealed the scope of his impact. At the convention center, those who had once stood nervously before him in court now came voluntarily to honor him. At the cathedral, leaders of church and state stood alongside everyday citizens. Online, people who had never set foot in Providence joined in collective mourning. The convergence of these worlds testified to the unique place Caprio held. His burial did not close his story, but ensured that his lessons would continue. The countless clips of his courtroom will remain available for future generations, offering examples of kindness, humor, and fairness. Teachers will continue to use his cases to show students the human side of justice. Families will share his videos as reminders that even in positions of authority, compassion matters. And Rhode Islanders will remember him as one of their own, someone who carried the state's values onto a global stage. Frank Caprio's death brought sadness, but his burial became a moment of unity. Rhode Island gathered to say goodbye, and the world joined in, recognizing the legacy of a man who showed that justice can be kind. Known universally as the nicest judge, he left behind a vision of what public life should be, rooted in dignity, humility, and empathy. On August 29th, when he was laid to rest, the farewell was not just from a city or a state. It was from millions around the world who had seen in him the possibility of a better, more humane justice. His family has said they are grateful for the support they have received and comforted by the knowledge that his influence reached so many. For them, his passing is deeply personal. For Rhode Island, it is the loss of a civic icon. For the world, it is the goodbye to a man who redefined what it means to judge fairly. His burial was the final chapter of a remarkable life, but the story he wrote through his actions will continue to inspire.